All right, here we are, Power Rankings Part 3. We're going to go number 21 through 32 to find out who is the king shitter in the NFL going into the season. Number 21, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Finished 9-8 last year. They beat the Eagles in the wild card, destroyed them, lost in the divisional round to the Lions in a fairly close game. They have the 5th easiest schedule in 2024. I think they lost, They lost Dave Canales, their offensive coordinator, and I think that's probably the biggest loss that they've had. He's kind of been a quarterback whisperer, and brought Baker his best season of the year, so of his career. Sorry. So we'll see if Baker can continue to have success, but I do think that's a big loss. They extended Mike Evans, extended Baker, added some good pieces in the draft. I like what they did signing Graham Barton. They've really rebuilt that offensive line in the last couple seasons. Graham Barton, Cody Mock. Obviously, got Tristan Wirfs there. Jalen McMillan is going to be a great third receiver there. You bring in Bucky Irving, who I wouldn't be surprised if he overtakes Rachaad White sooner than later. And then they've added some pieces on defense as well. They got a pretty good roster. They might have a shot to beat Atlanta for the division again this year. Number 22, we got the Washington Commanders. A lot of change in this organization. You finished 4-13 last year. This year they're right in the middle of the pack there, 16th hardest or nicest schedule. They bring in Dan Quinn, drafted Jaden Daniels, number 2. Complete roster overhaul. They brought in so many different players. I think they had more turnaround than maybe any other team. Love the draft pick of Mike Sanders still. Luke McCaffrey's there, another McCaffrey. Bring in Bobby Wagner, Jeremy Chin, Frankie Louvu. Good signings there. Let's see, who's the guy? Dorrance Armstrong from Dallas. Yeah, I mean they've added some pieces. Zach Ertz is there. I don't think he's that good. I'm concerned about their offensive line. I don't think their offensive line is going to be good. And it's a good thing you got Jaden Daniels who can run, but man, he might get crushed back there. But overall, they've really turned around their roster a bit, and I think the culture change is the most important thing. Number 23, the Dallas Cowboys. I can already just see people in the comments, the Cowboys fans, up in arms, just calling me all kinds of names. Finished 12-5, lost in the wild card round. They got blown out by the Packers. 12th hardest schedule. Man, I mean, they didn't do anything in free agency this offseason, and that's, people were bitching about that, but they didn't have any money to. So I don't really know what they expected. You lose Tyron Smith, you lose Dante Fowler, lost Dorrance Armstrong, lost Tony Pollard, lost Dan Quinn, bring in Mike Zimmer. They bring back Zeke and add Dalvin Cook, just 2 washed up old running backs. Deron Bland is already out for 6 to 8 weeks. There's just kind of a hangover there too. I don't know, getting blown out, and I don't know. They didn't do anything. They didn't go all in. Dak's not signed. They did sign CD, but Dak and Parsons unsigned. I think they're going to regress quite a bit this year. Number 24, the Raiders finished 8-9. They have the 8th hardest schedule this year. They re-signed last year's interim head coach Antonio Pierce. Seems like the players really loved him. Played hard for him. They signed Christian Wilkins, one of the biggest free agency signings. Paid him a boatload. Minshew they brought in to be their starting quarterback. He won the job over Aiden O'Connell. You lose Josh Jacobs. Draft Brock Bowers. I didn't hate what they did in the draft. People kind of question it because you just drafted Michael Mayer high, but Brock Bowers is an elite weapon in an offense that needed some of that. And then they drafted Jackson Powers Johnson, which looks like he is not currently their starter. Obviously the question marks are quarterback. I don't see Minshew being able to lead this team to a playoffs. Not that he's a terrible backup, but to be the guy, especially in an offense that doesn't have that many weapons, concerns me. You have Devontae Adams who's aging, Jacoby Myers, so that's an okay 1-2, and then Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. So I guess it's actually not horrible. Offensive line has some questions. I don't really think Zamir White or Madison's going to do much in the running game. And then their D-line is obviously the strength of the team. Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins. We'll see if Tyree Wilson can take a step at all. But their defense was playing really good second half of last year. And that's going to be, I think their defense will keep them in a lot of games, but you're going to want to be able to run the ball as well. So that's going to be a concern. Just think that their defense will keep them in a lot of games and probably win them some games outright. So number 25, the Arizona Cardinals finished 4-13. Obviously, Kyler missed a good chunk of last year. They have the 8th easiest schedule this year, so you got Kyler healthy. You get drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. They added a ton of young talent in the draft. Them and the Commanders got, it felt like every other pick in the first 3 rounds was one of those teams picking. So you had Marvin, you had Trey Benson, you had 2 guys in the secondary that I liked, and Adrian Taylor Demerson, and Max Melton. I think unfortunately the guy that they drafted, Darius Robinson, is on IR. That's rough. I don't remember if it's season ending or not. I think it is. They've had a huge roster turnaround, and they're going to be improved. They were competitive in a lot of games last year with like Josh Dobbs even. I think this offense could be damn good though. Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson could be a big player. They were hyping up Greg Dortch. The O-line's questionable. It's definitely questionable. I don't think it's terrible, but it's not top half of the league. James Conner has been solid, but he gets injured a lot. Trey McBride broke out last year. Could be in for an even better year. Their defense isn't going to be that great this year. That's gonna probably hold them back from being a playoff team. But bright future ahead for the Cardinals. Number 26, Tennessee Titans finished 6-11 last year. 10th easiest schedule this coming season. Mike Vrabel out. They bring in Brian Callahan as their new head coach. They signed Calvin Ridley, paid him a boatload, took him away from their division rival, and they signed Tyler Boyd, who has a history with Callahan. They draft J.C. Latham, trade for L'Jarius Sneed, great signing. Signed Tony Pollard. Sneaky, decent running back room now. I like the 1-2 punch in Pollard and Spears. J.C. Latham, trying to build that O-line to go with Brian Callahan's dad, who's a great offensive line coach, to coach him up. You got him, and then you got Peter Skoronski, their first rounder last year. Lloyd Cushenberry at center. They've rebuilt this O-line a little bit in the last couple of seasons, which is gonna be nice. If Will Levis throws a decent deep ball, so if you can give him some time, he can hit these guys deep. I mean, Ridley. Sounds like DeAndre Hopkins supposedly is playing through a torn MCL. That's concerning. But I mean, Hopkins, if he can have any kind of impact, Ridley, and then Boyd, that's a pretty good 1-2-3. And then Burks is, we'll see what happens there. Defensively, signed Trevondre Sweat. You got Jeffrey Simmons still, Harold Landry. They traded for Ernest Jones from the Rams. Sounds like they stole him away. Really liked that L'Jarius Sneed trade. He's one of the best press corners in football. Signed Quandre Diggs. I think he can still have an impact. He's starting for them. Jamal Adams, I did see yesterday he is not even going to be playing in week 1, which is not shocking. So he's not going to have much of an impact. But this is a sneaky good roster. They had a ton of turnaround as well. It's just going to come down to how is Will Levis in year 2. So, yeah. Number 27, the Denver Broncos. As of this recording, tomorrow morning, they are playing my Seahawks. So I'm not trying to just hate on them here. I'm just being honest. Give my honest take. Finished 8-9 last year. They had the 20th hardest schedule this year. They draft Bo Nix. Russell Wilson is out. Russell Wilson experiment did not work. Traded Jerry Jeudy away. That's fine. He wasn't doing anything. They did not draft J.C. Latham. That is wrong. Don't know why that's on there. They have some questions on defense. I think they have a bottom 5 roster in football. I do think Sean Payton's a good coach, and he's going to have this offense playing above average. But their skill position guys, Cortland Sutton, Reynolds, and Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, those guys are okay, but there's no superstar there. There's no difference maker, in my opinion. Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime, it's a solid backfield. But their defense, when I'm just looking at this, outside of Pat Surtain, and I don't know, maybe a defensive lineman you could throw in there. I don't like Cody Barton. I saw him on the Seahawks for years. He was not good. It's just not a great roster. So I don't think they're gonna do better than what they did last year. But there's some things to be, if Bo Nix is their franchise quarterback, that's all that matters going forward. So number 28, Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins leaves in free agency. They were letting him test, and he got out of there. drafted J.J. McCarthy, but unfortunately his season is over in the preseason. I believe a torn MCL. He was looking decent, with the limited exposure that we saw, so it's kind of a bummer. Hawkinson is on the PUP list. He's going to be out for first 4 weeks at minimum. I liked the nice signings they had on defense. They brought in Jonathan Grenard, Blake Cashman. Stephon Gilmore's there even. Their defense is solid, and they were playing good last year towards the end, and obviously they drafted Dallas Turner, so their defense is going to carry this team, I think. And so you're going forward with Sam Darnold. That's scary, but he does have weapons. You bring in Aaron Jones. Obviously, you get the best receiver in football, and Justin Jefferson. And Addison had a great rookie season as well. Some Jalen Naylor hype as their third receiver there. And then you get Hawkinson back. If Sam Darnold's ever going to show that he could be a starting quarterback, it's going to be this season. So I think it's going to be tough for them, though. I do. I don't think they're in for a good year, unfortunately. But if they can figure out the quarterback situation going forward, this roster has been built up a bit. Number 29, Carolina Panthers, finished 2-15 last year. Did not get the top pick because they traded that away for Bryce Young. Third easiest schedule. Hired Dave Canales. I think it's a great hiring, especially to try to develop Bryce Young. They improved their skill positions quite a bit. They had probably the worst set of skill position players last year. They brought in Deontay Johnson, drafted Xavier Legette, drafted Jonathan Brooks, who's currently starting out on PUP, so he'll probably help them out big time in the second half of the season. They signed Damian Lewis, paid him a ton of money, and he was pretty average, but still they needed an upgrade at guard. At the other guard position, they signed Robert Hunt, who was doing really well, paid him like $20 million a year. So they've invested really heavily in trying to help out Bryce Young and give him a shot. They did lose quite a bit on defense, though. Jeremy Chin, Frankie Louvu, traded away Brian Burns, so they're looking pretty thin on defense. That's probably going to be the issue. But again, kind of like Bo Nix, if you can see the improvement in Bryce Young and promise, that's kind of all that matters for them this year. Number 30, the New Orleans Saints. They finished 9-8, just missed out on the playoffs. They have the easiest schedule this year, so you might be thinking, why do you have a team at 30 who has the easiest? Sorry, it's getting late, kind of stumbling on my words. Easiest schedule. They have concerns on the O-line. It was bad last year. Trevor Penning has been horrible. They switched him to right tackle because they drafted Talise Fuaga, which is a great draft pick. I think he's going to end up being good. But outside of that, man, not looking great there. To me, it's just their skill position guys. Like, Chris Olave's good. Shaheed has shown some promise. He could have a step up this year. But, outside of that, not great. Foster Moreau was your tight end. Alvin Kamara's getting up there in age. He's not the same runner. He can still contribute in the passing game. And then Kendre Miller, unfortunately, has been so banged up, and he's starting out on IR, so we're not going to get to see him. Also, their defense has really been aging. Jordan Cameron's getting up there. Marshawn Lattimore, Mario Davis. Not quite the same. I think they're going to struggle this year. Number 31, New York Giants finished 6-11. Got the sixth hardest schedule. They traded for Brian Burns, which is great. I think he's going to be really good. Lost Wink Martindale as their DC. Sounds like there was just a rift between him and Brian Dable. Lost Saquon Barkley, which, as we saw last Friday night, Saquon had 3 touchdowns in his debut for the Eagles, so that is big. They brought in Devin Singletary, but that is not the same. They lose Xavier McKinney. Drafted Malik Neighbors. He's going to be a superstar, but you do have Daniel Jones at quarterback. Improved their offensive line, which they desperately needed. They signed, I think, 2 or 3 different starters now. The receiving core is not bad. Malik Neighbors, Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson. That's not a terrible 1-2-3. Unfortunately for them, they have Daniel Jones at their quarterback. And he, even in the preseason, threw a just boneheaded pick 6. He's going to hold them back. He's probably going to be out of there after this season and be a backup. Also, Darren Waller retired, so not good for the Giants. Last and definitely least, we have the king of the shitters, New England Patriots. They finished 4-13. They have the 8th hardest schedule. Belichick, the greatest coach of all time, possibly is gone. Bring in Drake May. Trade away Matthew Judon. Probably the worst offensive line in football. They have improved the receiving core, which they desperately needed. They brought in Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. So it could be some improvements there. And there's questions on defense. I think if there's going to be a strong point of this team, it will be their secondary. but I don't think they're going to be that good. And I think they're just going to be the king of the shitters this year, which brings me great pleasure considering how good they were for such a long time.